Hi, welcome to AfterHours podcast, Scary Stories. Darren and I have been collecting scary stories from the guests we've had on the show. Throughout October, we will be posting 2 scary stories a week, one on Tuesday and one on Thursday. So without further ado, let's get started. We are talking with Tilman and Darren. We're trying to get someone to talk about his UFO story.
Yeah. I have content. If I don't feel like I have the right space to share it, I won't share it, and then I'll shut down. Do you mean? Then I'll shut down. And then if you haven't noticed, I'm very mood driven.
No, yeah.
I mean, yeah, definitely. Like a lot of people are. I mean, yeah.
All right, so Darren, let's talk. You were talking about how you were able to lead him into the story. Let's hear your UFO story.
Okay, so I remember this when I first moved to Flagstaff, and this is just a weird UFO story in general. That literally, I thought I was like going a little crazy when I first started seeing this. I was literally I started timing my event to this, right? Literally, where every night I would look up towards Mount Eldon, which is one of the nearby mountains here, and I would see like green lights just like going in erratic patterns, literally like crossing each other and going across each other. And everybody was always telling me, "Oh yeah, that's just the radio on the top of the hill." I'm like, those don't move. I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, there's not green lights moving around the mountain. Those aren't radio towers. And I brought it up to like a few people, and I was like, does anybody know what this is? They're like, oh, well, it could just be fireflies or something. They could be like flying around in front of your face. I'm like,
fireflies? I was like, we don't have fireflies here.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, first of all, for months, they're just there
doing the same thing in front of my face.
I was like, it's winter. I was like, these things should be hibernating at this point. But it was crazy. I would always time it. It started at 11:15 at night, and they were just literally there was like 2 green lights that were literally just dancing around the mountain together. And sometimes they would come in front of it, sometimes they would go in back of it, and I would just like watch it, and I'll be like, I don't know what that is, but they're definitely moving faster than aircraft, and they're like, the agility of them is like, they're not making sound.
They have dexterity too, right? Like in terms of the way they move.
Yeah.
They're agile.
Yeah, they're very agile, and they're just like, it's weird because they're not making sound, and they're also 2 lights that are just moving around the mountain, and I'm just like, how and what is that? And it was a weird scenario for me for like months on end. That when I used to live out in Smoke Rise, which is on the right side of Mount Eldon.
Yeah.
Weirded me out for a full year. Didn't know what it was. And then it just stopped one day, and I never knew what it was. Years later, I finally found a few other people a few other night owls that were up at the time that like witnessed it, and they were like, yeah, I didn't know what that was either. And I'm like, so it wasn't me. I wasn't going crazy. It's like it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
I kind of kept it to myself because I mentioned it to a lot of people, and they were like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "You're just seeing things." I'm like,
"Yeah,
yeah." And then I started talking to other people, and other people were like, "Oh yeah, that's a thing." And I'm like,
"Yeah." So now we're all having shared hallucinations.
Yeah, exactly. Shared hallucinations. I mean, somebody might have been like fucking throwing away their shrooms and just burning them. That's what people do out there. They have there's there's campfires. There's smoke in the air.
All right.
Who knows what's in the air at that time of the night?
So Tilman, I am aware that you also have a UFO story.
Oh my god, who told you that?
Oh my god.
Okay.
I heard of this.
So I have to give some context, I guess. So this is probably 2 months in the pandemic since March. So like March, April, May.
So this
May
is fairly
to June.
recent.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. From like May to June, I was on the reservation. I spent a good, probably about 8 to 10 weeks on the reservation in total since the pandemic started. I was working on a hogan and basically a structure that you build yourself, modern structure. So the reservation just has amazing skies. There's the nearest light pollution's a town of maybe 150,000, and that's Flagstaff, and that's at least 120 miles from where I was looking at. So pristine skies and amazing skies.
Yeah.
And some background to me looking at skies, I've been fascinated ever since I was a child. When I was a little kid, I had amazing vision. I still have very, very good vision right now. So I've spent a lot of time looking at the night sky, and I've come to identify star clusters, planets, stars, the differences between planets and stars, where to look for planets and stars, the ecliptic, I found the zodiac. I understand the reason why the zodiac exists and different things. To myself, I would say I'm very familiar with the night sky, especially in this day and age. I also know what is a satellite when it's going across the sky. If it looks like a planet, but it's moving at a constant rate, and it can appear and disappear, moving at a constant rate, that usually signifies satellite. If you look at a blinking light going across the sky at a constant rate, that's usually a plane. If you're looking at a star, more than likely the color might change like a little bit, and then you're also seeing flashing.
It'll twinkle.
Right, it will twinkle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for me, I've been looking at the sky for years, and I have a planisphere. I've had many apps. I've had a lot. I would say I'm pretty confident when looking at the night sky. And then one night, I actually had my cousins over to see the new hogan that we built. They came, which we shouldn't have been meeting, but I mean, we're human, we're social beings or whatever. We came home, and it was too hot in my house. We don't have AC on the reservation, but it was like 90 that day, whatever. It was too hot in the house to hang out in the house, so we're hanging out on the porch. And if you're looking, this would be like the northern portion of the sky, like North America, around midsummer. And the time of night would probably be 9 o'clock, maybe close to 10 on the res time. So that's daylight savings. Right, I would say 12 o'clock, if you know in astronomy, which is directly above you. 12 o'clock, right ahead of you. I was actually looking at Arcturus, which is one of the brightest stars in the sky. I always find Arcturus, it's a really cool star to look at. I was looking at that star. I was with 4 different cousins, and I was pointing to the star, being like, look, this is Arcturus. If you look north, you're going to see this, Polaris and the Big Dipper. And I was just basically going over the constellations, which I do every night. And while looking at Arcturus, it looked like to the right of Arcturus was a satellite coming. And it catches my eye. Since I'm showing my cousins the star Arcturus, I see the satellite, and I turned everyone's 4 of us attention to that satellite. I'm like, look, guys, that's a satellite. And I start naming the reasons why I think it's a satellite. It's moving at a constant speed. It's not twinkling, and it doesn't have a blink. That tells me it's a satellite way up high, and it's moving. So while it's moving, and I'm giving these, that's a satellite, right when it becomes maybe a degree or 2 of directly above us, it all of a sudden changes from like a blue star looking, like a normal satellite looking bluish white light. All of a sudden it dims a little bit, and then it looks like someone had, if you're looking at like a lighthouse, and it goes from dim to bright with the light and then back to dim. Like someone got a flashlight and flashed it, or a spotlight, flashed it away from us, to us, and then away from us again. Exactly as it was going right over us, while I was pointing that object to my cousin saying it was a satellite, that thing unexpectedly shone and got brighter and got very bright to where it looked like someone had a spotlight and just shone it towards exactly where we were looking. Exactly, pretty much at the same time, everyone saw it and looked at it, and I was like, oh, look, that's a satellite. And right after I finished saying satellite, it literally, like,
did the whole different thing a satellite doesn't do.
It did a fucking fog light to us, and in that time, I was just like, oh my god, and then I was just like, oh, I was just like, oh my, I was just making all kinds of weird noise, and then I was like, oh shit, did you guys see that? And everyone was just
yeah, you just said it was a satellite.
Yeah, exactly. There was no way to be like, no one saw that. One cousin, so I don't know, I've been trying to break it down because I also believe in spirituality things and, being native or whatever. In my family, we have a belief that one of my cousins is more spiritual than the rest of us. Something called, hand trembling or whatever. She has a gift, You could say psychic or whatever. She has a closer connection to what we don't.
Is it hand trembling?
It's hand trembling.
Because there are a few different ones that people are more...
Yeah, that's also like I believe that's also like a Haitian kind of thing.
Yeah. It's definitely feeling a different, something that's not tangible to other people.
Yeah,
in
terms of hand trembling though, like that's more in terms of like finding things, right?
Yes. Yes, it's. I would say you're more ephemeral.
You feel spirituality.
Yes, you're just more in tune with that sense. I wouldn't say, like, to me, it's always been there. They're just more in tune to feeling it. So
sure.
So during this time when that thing went over us, I am thinking purely analytical, logical, scientific method, things I'm going, like, I literally have
You're trying to understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I literally have spent so many hours looking at the sky on the reservation in that particular point of sky and have been able to recognize a lot of things in the sky that I know. I know what is a helicopter, what is a plane, what is a satellite, what is in the sky that I've seen. And this is the most familiar sky I know of is at home in Pinyon. Literally the most sky I've ever been looking at.
Yeah.
And I can't explain. And that was the first time I wasn't able to explain because I've never seen a satellite go over and then like flashlight and strobe like us.
Yeah.
And then so continuing with the story, it does that over us and keeps going towards, so it came from the south going north.
Yeah.
And while it was going north, there's some trees where I live, where the porch is. The leaves got in the way of the tree, so I went down and I tried going to the left, trying to continue watching this thing, which never did another fog light thing, but it kept going straight like a satellite. It looked like a normal satellite.
Yeah.
Just going that way. But while I was trying to readjust around the trees, I lost track of it. One cousin didn't see what we all saw. So 3 of us saw the light and everything. One cousin was, I guess, blind enough, or I don't know what was going on. She couldn't track it, and when it actually shined over us, that was when, according to her point of view, she was underneath the roof where she couldn't see that part of it. But when I went over to readjust myself to find where it was going, continuing north behind the leaves, I see something going from east to west. And I'm like, oh, it's right there. It changed direction. And my cousin sees that, and it does another kind of like...
Go around?
Not a go around, but another like fog light type of phenomenon that I saw, that you can see that it's spreading like a spotlight type of thing, except this time it's not spreading it towards where we're looking like we're going to see it as a point of light looking at us.
Yeah.
From that perspective, that one going from east to west made a horizontal sweep, but we were not in the line of sight, so we could see that beam going above us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when that cousin that didn't see the first one was like, oh, I see it. And then when I see that phenomenon, I was like, that's not the same one we saw. And right when I think that I see that one that we saw still going north. a lot more faint, but going north.
But
now,
so there's
two now.
There was two.
Yeah, I didn't even know about the one going from east to west, but we saw the one going north to south or south to north, and that flashlight us or whatever. And while I was trying to readjust towards the leaves, that's when I see the one going horizontal, literally perpendicular to the other one.
Yeah.
And that's when the cousin that didn't see the first one saw that. And that's when she's like, "Oh, I saw it." And I was like, "No, that's a different one." Yeah. And so we go in, and at this point, I'm just jumping up and down. I'm like, "We fucking saw UFOs. You know, we don't know what that is. It's not a plane. There is no sound. With helicopter plane, even if there's a delay, there's always sound. There's always some kind of like sound or something else.
Yeah. You hear it behind it, but that's because how sound works, right?
Yeah. But there was nothing. It was silent. All we could hear was ourselves, and we only saw light and phenomenon.
Like airplanes, helicopters.
And if it was moving at that speed, that's a lot faster than the plane moves over.
And with that, that is the end of After Hours Podcast, Scary Stories episode. If you have any experiences, be sure to write them down in the comments. I'd love to read them. Like and subscribe, and hope you have a good, spooky October.